there. Share it. There. Why you always sit there so silent? You can talk to them. Do you hate them? Mm-mm. That's not sharing. Or sharing. That's not talking. What's up, guys? Hi, he doesn't know how to talk. I'm sorry. I don't know why he doesn't talk. I'm trying to share, as per usual, the live feed. So if you are here, go ahead and hit that share button. Are you like, wow, you're fucking gay.
Was you watching your phone? How'd you see
No,
it?
I could hear you. Because you're dumb. What's up, y'all? Hello and welcome to the Casual Scream. I am your host, Lady Rome, and this is this guy.
Shoot.
Evidently, he doesn't know how to say his name either. Like anything.
I'm dancing very carefully on this episode.
Well, I mean, you can talk about it. Anyways,
B,
holy
I
shit.
miss you, B.
So many people here already. What's up, y'all? Okay. So, tonight we will be discussing the Gabby Petito Brian Laundrie case. But before we start, we do want to thank everyone for once again being here. Thank you for yet another week of your support and whatnot. Thank you for those who share the posts, the street teamers, all you guys. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for everything you do. And if you haven't had a chance yet, please go ahead and share that live feed for us. Anyways, any news? No.
My knee hurts.
There's his news. Yeah, no news. So
Hazen knows what's up. Dick Warlock.
Oh, here we go again. No, we're not doing this again. You guys are so dumb. I can't with all of you. All right, so that said, since we still don't have anything cool to talk about, we're just gonna, I guess, get right into this. Because last week was a total fucking shit show, so sorry about that.
It was a huge success.
No, it was horrible. And thanks to those who did stick around for it. So, anyways, to avoid that from happening again, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into
She said, "Do
the episode." So, we're going to start off with talking about a little bit about Gabby here. She was born and raised in Blue Point, New York. She was the oldest of 6 siblings. She graduated in 2017 from Bayport Blue Point High School in Bayport, New York. I did not know if I was going to be able to say that properly. Nailed it. Where she also met Brian in school. From September 2017 to January of 2019, she lived in Carolina Beach, North Carolina. She worked as a hostess in a kitchen in a restaurant. It was there she also applied to Cape Fear Community College, but she did not attend it. In March of 2019, she began dating Brian. What are you doing with your life? What are you doing? I don't know what he's talking about. Anyways, in March of 2019, she began dating Brian and then moved in with him and his parents in Northport, Florida. What? What the fuck are you talking about? I don't have time for you. In late 2019, early 2020, they drove from New York to California on a road trip in their little Nissan Sentra. They visited several different places on this trip. And from there, it looks like in June of 2020, they visited a place called Scope Creek. And that's where they had gotten her. And then in July, they got engaged, July 2020. Quite the Instagram posts on those engagements on both of their pages. But we'll get into that further on. In December of 2020, she purchased a 2012 Ford Transit I can't say it, Connect van.
I used to have one.
He did. When we very first got together, that's actually what he drove. Van.
SUV.
It's a van.
SUV.
It says it right here, even in my notes. It's a van. This is an argument he and I had about his vehicle when we first started dating. But anyways, so they had purchased in 2020, in December of 2020, the 2012 Ford Transit Connect van, which they would convert into a camper, which they would occupy, like live out of as they traveled. They planned their next cross-country trip. And it was from this point that Gabby proceeded to document her life and her travels on social media sites, including her Instagram and even a YouTube channel that they were going to start together called Nomadic Static. There is one video that was posted. It was an 8-minute long video. I posted the link on my Facebook. It's kind of sad when you watch it. It was the very first video that they had ever, or the only video that was posted to that Nomadic Static page on YouTube. But anyway, so that's a little bit of backstory. So going forward, we have a timeline here. That's pretty much how we're going to run this entire thing. It all just happened. When we had decided to do this case, it was currently happening. But when we decided, it was when we very first decided to come back. So we put together a month's worth of episodes all at once. And this was the case. So it was picked about 3 weeks in advance, which had given us plenty of time to basically watch the case unfold and close. Starting in July 2nd, 2020 is that engagement that I mentioned earlier. So they did post on their Instagrams, both very lengthy and, heartfelt, endearing posts about their engagement. Then exactly 1 year before their actual departure on this trip, they announced their engagements. December 11th of 2020 is when the van was purchased. So that's what they ended up remodeling on the inside, making it like a house on wheels, essentially. Much more affordable, I'm sure, than a RV or whatever. But yeah, so just a little van life that they were going to start together. On July 2nd, 2021, this is when they do depart on their last journey together. So the couple had been in Blue Point, New York, which is where Gabby is originally from, to celebrate her younger brother's graduation from high school. So they took off from Gabby's family. Gabby's maternal, I think it's her mom. Yes, her mom's the one that lives in New York. So her maternal mother, her maternal parent home, or whatever, however you want to say it, and started this, what was planned to be a 4-month cross-country journey. According to the Petito family attorney, the pair had gotten engaged but postponed their wedding plans because of the coronavirus pandemic, and they decided to also take the trip instead. Also, I heard report that they had just felt that maybe they were too young or perhaps rushing into things, which kind of the way this all pans out makes you wonder if maybe one person felt more so that that they were just too young or whatever, more so that one person wanted to call it off rather than both. But anywho, we'll get into all of that. Sorry, I'm going through a shit ton of notes here. So they had documented several places on their trip on Instagram. Mostly according to Gabby's Instagram, she posted more often. But they had stopped in several different places. So, like on July 4th, Monument Rock, Kansas. July 8th, Colorado Springs, Colorado. July 10th, the Great Sand Dunes National Park and Preserve in Colorado. July 16th, Zion National Park, Utah. July 21st, the Bryce Canyon National Park in Utah. July 26th, Mystic Hot Springs in Utah. July 29th, the Canyonlands National Park, Utah. August 12th, Arches National Park, Utah, which is also another important date. And then there's a couple more posts after that, which one of them is a post on August 19th, where it's a picture of Gabby's legs and it's kind of like a view out of the what is it called, the van, into like the desert. And it's got quite a descriptive post about people littering or not taking care of the planet the way they should. And then August 25th is her last known Instagram post. So there's all that. But that takes us to, in the timeline, that leads us to the August 12th situation, which is the altercation in Moab City, Utah. So on August 12th, police had an encounter with Gabby and Brian. And as the pair was described to be having some sort of physical altercation, according to a report released by the Moab Police Department. So what had happened was a 911 call had came in that there was a physical disturbance between both Brian and Gabby, stating that Brian was slapping Gabby. And then once he noticed that, something along the lines of having pulled over, and when he pulled over, he watched Brian chase her up and down the sidewalk, hit her again, jumped in the van. They both got in the van and they took off. So that was the initial 911 call. There was also a second, to my knowledge, it was an eyewitness, well, not an eyewitness, they're both eyewitnesses, but a bystander eyewitness, somebody who was just physically in the area, like not in a vehicle driving by, but had seen it and gave a written report where he stated that he seen them fighting over a phone. He had seen Gabby he had seen her hit him, but wasn't sure if it was kind of like play fighting or what. Then watched as Brian had locked her out of the van, watched her climb in over top of him through the driver's side, if I'm not mistaken. And said something along the lines when she got in the car of, why do you have to be so stupid? So those were the two separate police reports that had came in. Like I said, one was a 911 call for sure, and that was the initial call. And this is the call that prompted police to look for the vehicle. When an officer arrived and did spot the vehicle, the first thing he noticed was that the vehicle was driving with 45 and a 15, I believe is what it was stated as. And so from there, he goes to engage as far as pull them over, get their attention. He flashes their lights at him a couple of times. And this is when he notices the driver of the vehicle, which is Brian, hit the curb, and it has high speeds. This is when he actually flips on his sirens and full on engages in the pullover. So this is where we get body cam footage. This was as this unfolded, this kind of was a big deal for a lot of people because it gave you, at this point when the body cam footage had come out, they hadn't even found her yet, right? When the body cam, if I'm not mistaken, because when I started really studying the case, this was after she was found, but before he was found. So if I'm not mistaken, that's how that went. But anyways, so they released this footage, and it kind of gave you an opening, like a look into their relationship. Now, I've watched the body. We both have watched the body cam footage from start to finish. It's very lengthy. It's over an hour long. There are some parts that are, completely muted out to where you can't hear personal, private, like information. Obviously, we ended up with her date of birth and stuff like that. I'm not sure what else is in that. I don't know if social security numbers or what are also involved, but either way. So the body cam footage tells a different kind of story. Well, it tells, it paints a very clear photo or very clear image of what their relationship is like. Personally, I believe that there was a lot of signs that the police department didn't. I don't really want to fault the police department 100%, but I'm gonna go as far as saying that they definitely didn't take the proper steps in realizing that there was a domestic dispute or situation going on in this relationship. So for starters, Nancy, I really didn't take a whole hell of a lot of notes on the body cam because I'd seen it so many times and now I've got to discuss it. So you remember, though, you watched it with me. Are you going to talk at all during this episode? No, you're just going to sit there and look pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Eye candy.
Cool. So, anyways, they pull her over. They pulled them over, and as soon as it's so heartbreaking. As soon as they pull her over, the very first thing that happens is she rolls down her window because she's the passenger and they're going to the passenger side of the vehicle. And the first thing she does as soon as they roll the window, she rolls the window down. She immediately starts apologizing for her actions. She doesn't she doesn't skip a beat. She immediately goes right into blaming herself for all of this. And as personally, okay, so also, it's fair to mention, and for anybody else who has actually studied this case or, paid super close attention as it was unfolding or whatever, and has actually been a victim themselves, I, as a victim myself from domestic violence, having been in a couple of very serious domestic violence relationships, even one, anyways, we're not going to go into that, but so yeah, I as a survivor and a victim of domestic violence myself, to see this unfold the way I seen it, I could spot it from a mile away. So why the very trained and very capable police department of where was this, Moab? Why they didn't pick up on the science is absolutely beyond me. Or well, they kind of did. They kind of did attempt to investigate, but it was like everything took a turn for the worst immediately. So anyway, like I said, they pull up, they get out, they walk up to her car, she rolls down her window, she immediately starts apologizing for her mistakes, her actions. It was her. She blames herself immediately out the gate. So they pull them out, they separate the two, and they start discussing the situation with each one of the parties involved, which is how it was supposed to be done. They did follow protocol there and immediately separate the two and start discussing the situation. Sorry, I'm thirsty. So anyways, that happens. But from there, they start noticing, if I'm not mistaken, they start with her and they start talking to her about what was going on, what was happening, and she starts blaming herself, talking about her OCD. She suffers from OCD. She's trying to keep the van clean, and she's I assume the way I translated it was her, she was probably trying to keep the van clean. He wasn't keeping it clean. She might have been bitching or nagging or complaining or what have you. Just, like I've been the woman in that situation where I've complained about, hey man, clean up your fucking feet, clean up your mess. We're in a small living quarters, whatever, and plus they're on the road together. They've been on the road together.
I'm clean as fuck, boy.
Yeah, it's clean. But just being in a situation like that, especially when you're in close confined areas and stuff like that, I can understand how people will get on people's nerves and stuff starts to boil and stuff like that. So kind of that's how I was translating it as she's talking about her OCD, and she's like discussing about how she can kind of get mean and how her vibe, kind of escalates and stuff like that. So basically what she's discussing is, getting frustrated with certain situations and maybe perhaps having some anxiety. But anyways, and then she starts telling things right out the gate, which is very leading, like, not sure what I'm trying to say, where she says she starts discussing the Nomadic Static channel and how she's trying to do a blog of their travels, and she's trying to start this web page, and he doesn't really believe in her, and he doesn't have faith in her and stuff like that. And that right there is a very telling part of this video, because that out the gate just shows that he doesn't support her. He doesn't believe in her. She's automatically blaming herself for all the issues. She takes full responsibility for everything that has happened. She's putting all the focus and all the blame on herself. She's also, while all this is happening, she can't stop crying. She can't stop fidgeting. She can't stop trying to self-soothe herself in ways like, like playing with her hands or playing with her legs or rubbing her legs, stuff like that. Like, it's all telltale signs of immediate again, anybody who's experienced this sort of situation knows exactly what I'm talking about. When you immediately take all that blame and you immediately put it all on you to divert any sort of attention from your abuser, from your attacker, because Lord knows if you tell the truth at all or in any way, shape, or form, it's going to come back on you when all is said and done. And of course, that's not what any of us, victims in that situation ever want. So it's immediate out the gate. You see it. Then I think he sits her down in a car. They start trying to get information back and forth. Like I said, this is an hour-long video. We do end up at a part where we're back at she's now sitting inside one of the police vehicles. She's not detained. Neither one of them are detained at this point. But they come back to the vehicle where she's sitting, and they start discussing with her, did he hit you? Or anything like that. And she blatantly states in this video on camera, blatantly, you can see it. It's right there. It's recorded. It's filmed. She states that essentially, yes, he put his hands on her and, he grabbed a hold of her face. Something happened. He scratched her face. There's marks on her face. She talks about how it stings if she touches it. I mean, it's all in the video right then and there. She's openly admitting that the bigger, and not saying that it's like that size should matter, because size does matter. And I'm not saying that women can't be abusers, because they 100% can be abusers. But she is this big, not that he's a whole hell of a lot bigger, but he is in some ways bigger. And I may offend some people when I say this, but typically a man is going to hit harder than a woman. And not that that's always the case, but either way, I mean, if you've got obvious marks on a woman and the 911 call comes in stating that the man was hitting the woman, this is the very first statement that this officer even received when he found the vehicle. This is what prompted him to find the vehicle, is that there was a 911 call about a domestic dispute, that a man was slapping a woman, and that he had struck this woman, again, not once, but at least twice, got in a vehicle and took off. So that's what prompted him to even look for these people to begin with. And then she has physical marks on her. We kind of have to sort of go at this backing that story initially until we have more information. But anyways, so we discuss this with her, then we move on to him. We start talking to him where he is. You see him up, they pull him out of the vehicle. There's a park ranger there, so they all start talking together. And his whole demeanor, in my opinion, is just absolutely nauseating. I'm not a Brian fan, guys, just for the record. Not Team Brian. So when they pull him out of the car, what I see is 100% just cocky, entirely too confident. Of course, he's a little nervous because he's, speaking with the cops, but, and then I see narcissist written all over him. So we proceed to, they proceed to talk to him to get his side of the story and stuff like that. And immediately, the very first thing he says, the first thing that comes out of his mouth is he immediately starts blaming Gabby. immediately. He doesn't take any sort of responsibility for any sort of actions that might have started a fight or escalated a fight or any of it. He automatically starts blaming all of it on Gabby, points all the blame on Gabby 100%. So as he's sitting here feeding these cops this story, and you're just watching all of this take place, listening to his story, listening to him, essentially, it's almost like he's like cutting up with the police, like they're all homies or whatever, and they're just like talking about, chicks and they're crazy men, and like, oh man, like anxiety, and she just has all this anxiety, and she was just, like going crazy, and her little web, what did he call it? Her little web page thing, like
he was a fucking idiot.
He was a fucking asshole. So, anyways, they start discussing his side of it, and they start noticing marks on him as well. Like he's got a visible mark on his face. There are marks on him as well. So who really knows the actual truth? We don't really know. If I were to guess, given the way the whole scenario played out, my guess would be those are probably defensive wounds. But I can't say for sure. It kind of seems like from accounts, like people talking about their relationship prior to all of this, a lot of people said that they argued a lot anyway, on and off, arguing back and forth. So they were probably the type of couple that did a lot of that break up, and then 2 seconds later they were back together again, and then they'd have this massive blowout, and they'd break up, and then they'd be back together again, and just a very on and off kind of in a lot of ways very toxic relationship. But anyways, so we don't really know exactly what happened, but we do know that there were marks on both of the individuals in the situation. But like I said, the 911 call came in that he was slapping her. So anyways, they're discussing everything with him. They see all the marks on him. Next thing you know, there's another officer involved. And he takes, what does he do? He calls and gets the 911. He gets the reporting information, but he's only able to get in touch with 1 out of 2 of the reporting people.
The one that just happened not to see him hit her.
Yes, the second report, not the first report that came in, the 911 call, not the call that prompted the officer to actually find this couple currently experiencing a domestic violence situation, but the second report, which was the eyewitness who gave the written report to the police officer in person, and that was the gentleman who said that when he arrived, or when he saw the altercation, at this point he saw them just before they were getting into the vehicle and taking off, and he's the one that saw them kind of fighting over the phone, her hitting him, not super hard, of course. It was kind of like a give me my phone type shit, like not an actual like her hauling off and trying to beat his fucking ass type hit. Not that any hit is okay. I'm not saying any hit is okay. I'm just stating the difference in the types of hits, because I hit him all the time, but not like in a I'm gonna beat you type hit. It's more of a playful hit, not that it in situations where you're actually fighting, then it's okay, because it's not okay to hit your spouse ever. But either way, so this officer gets the call from the second person who discusses all he sees, which is them getting in the vehicle and taking off essentially, but he does see her hit him, not him hit her. So he gets that story, but doesn't follow up with the 911 caller at all. And he just hears the second story and automatically deems Gabby as the primary aggressor in this situation, and deems Brian the domestic violence victim in this situation, which, given the way it fucking turns out, that's kind of fucked up if you think about it. So what ends up happening is they have this poor little girl sitting in the back of this vehicle, and they've got her terrified half to death, thinking she's going to be facing charges of domestic violence. She's like 22 years old. She's going to have this on her criminal record forever. Once all is said and done, though, they discuss how they don't have to press charges on Gabby. And so they come up with this gigantic loophole, which technically the law states in the state of Utah that if domestic violence is an equation, if it is a situation, like if there is definitely marks or physical violence taking place in a relationship, no matter the severity, the Utah state law states that you have zero discretion, meaning somebody has to be named the main aggressor, in some cases both, but either way, somebody has to be deemed the main aggressor and somebody is going to jail no matter what. So they found some fucking wild ass loophole, which it's all on camera. They find this fucking loophole that states that they don't have to arrest her. They don't have to arrest anybody. They don't have to place a no contact order on anybody, but they would like them to stay apart for the night. So they jump through fucking hoops so that okay, I can't remember what it was called in Utah, but there's a place in Utah that helps victims of domestic violence. And what this company did was paid for a hotel room so that Brian could be laid up in a fucking hotel room with a bed and blankets and sheets and pillows and
watching porn
and fucking cable and a bathroom and a shower, a nice big fucking shower, hot shower, all that fun stuff. Laid him up in a hotel room paid for by people who advocate for victims of domestic violence, and left this poor little girl thinking she done beat the hell out of her man and she's an abuser to stay in a van by herself.
By the river.
So anyways, and something I would like to point out, which I just thought was odd, it just shows Brian's character out the fucking gate and what kind of liar piece of shit he was. Again, not Team Brian, and I don't care who likes it or not. There are some people who are Team Brian and fuck that dude. But anyways, fucking one thing that is stated on camera, blatantly on fucking camera, if you watch the video all the way through, is in the beginning at some point they're discussing them going in separate ways, and he's like, he doesn't have a phone. He mentions in the video, I don't have a phone. Like, he blatantly states he doesn't have a phone. And then later on in the video, there's two separate times in this video after stating to a fucking officer that he does not have a cell phone. The first one is where they're taking his information and they ask him for his cell phone number. He pulls out his cell phone, not her cell phone, because an officer has already gotten her cell phone out of the vehicle and taken her phone to her. So he definitely pulls his own cell phone that he does not fucking own, supposedly, out of his pocket and gives his phone number to the officers. And then later on at the very end of the video, when they do finally separate and they go their separate way, and in the stop itself, they're asking Gabby in the car, he's saying, is there anything you want me to tell him? Because at this point now, he's asking that they stay apart. They do not contact each other for the rest of the evening, so on and so forth. So he says, is there anything that you want me to tell him? Is there, I can relay a message. I can tell him, that you love him and that you'll see him tomorrow or anything like that. And she said, yeah. And could you tell him not to forget, make sure he doesn't forget a phone charger. He's really bad about forgetting phone chargers. And I'll be damned if this cop doesn't fucking go right to Brian after Brian has already told him he doesn't have a cell phone. And he tells Brian, make sure you get a fucking phone charger because, you're forgetful and you'll need that. So, I mean, it's on video. It's right there. He blatantly fucking lies about having a phone that he very obviously fucking has. But anyways, so that's the gist of the stop. And it's very scary to watch the police department, because I have been a victim of domestic violence. What I watched her do in that video, I've felt myself and done myself several times, be it to family or to friends, where you've been in a situation and you've got to get out of the situation or what have you. So a friend comes and gets you and you sit there and you make all kinds of excuses for, your spouse about how it was your fault and how you should have done better, or you should have been better, or maybe you just pissed them off and next time you'll do better and it really wasn't their fault and please don't be upset with them or please don't blame them. I've literally fucking done it. I've watched it. So for me to watch that video and watch it all happen, being played out in someone else's life, it was absolutely heartbreaking. And then to know the way everything kind of plays out, it's even more nauseating and disgusting to watch his demeanor and to watch how he lets her just go down for it. He literally goes to a hotel room and stays in a hotel room like a little fucking fat cat while she's left all by herself. I just can't. I can't with the way the police department handled that whole situation. So for those of you who either do know about the case or want to learn more about the case, definitely be sure to check it out on YouTube. Like I said, it's well over an hour long. I think the most common video is about an hour and 17 minutes long, but it's definitely worth the watch if you're interested in the case, and it's hard to watch, especially knowing how it turns out. But yeah, so whew, there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack right there. Sorry. You want to talk at all? Still look pretty. That's your kind of.
It's not an agree like I do in life.
But yeah, so that's the fucking body cam in a nutshell. So after this incident, this altercation, this take place on August 12th. Now, something really weird that happened, August 17th to August 23rd, Brian flies while they're on this 4-month road trip, while they're on this van life experience, in the middle of the fucking trip, August 17th to 23rd, 5 days after this altercation, Brian flies back home to Florida, leaves Gabby in Salt Lake City. I think it's Salt Lake City. Leaves her there, flies back to Florida for 6 days. Sorry, guys. 6 fucking days. And during this time, Stephen Bertolino, this is the Laundrie family's attorney. He states that Brian flew home. This is a statement from him, that Brian flew home during this time to obtain some items and to empty out and close the couple's combined storage unit that they had, that they had put all their belongings in just before leaving for this 4-month trip. So let's discuss that real quick, why I think that's odd. For starters, who needs 6 fucking days to clean out a fucking storage unit? Ever. Like, that just seems really extreme. Even the biggest storage unit that you could rent, I don't think it would take 6 full days to move everything out of it. So also, why in the middle of a trip are you going to leave? Chances are their stuff, they didn't have that much, because they were, if you remember back to the beginning, they were living in at Gabby, or not Gabby's. They were living in, oh shit, where were they living? Where did they live in Florida? Bayport? Nope, that's New York. Fuck, where did they move? Northport. Okay, in Northport, Florida. They were living with Brian's parents in Northport, Florida. So at best, they had maybe a basement full of stuff at best.
I could get
living with parents.
Shit in a storage unit in one day.
Well, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, now we're talking about the size of the storage unit, right? Like, they lived with his parents, so they didn't have a whole house full of shit. They only could have, at best, had like a room or a basement or something like that. So the storage unit is getting smaller. So it doesn't take 6 days to empty a very small storage unit. Also, it doesn't cost a lot to rent a small storage unit. So why would you fly home? And mind you, they're living off of bare minimum, because most of their funds at this point are going into the travel, into like surviving and living and having gas and being able to shower and stuff like that. Like, all this costs money while you're on the road. You don't just get to go places for free and stuff like that. Like, some of these parks require entry to camp in there and stuff like that. So
like some juggalo gypsies.
But this trip isn't free. So why in the middle of this trip do you pay hundreds of dollars? It had to have cost a round trip flight from Utah. Salt Lake City's in Utah, right? Mm-hmm. It's from Utah to Florida and back to Florida. It had to cost at least $200, $300, maybe $400 for that round trip flight. So why are you dropping that kind of money to close out a storage unit that, are you telling me there's no one in Florida that could have closed that storage unit out for you, like your father or your parents or her parents or anybody, your friends? Nobody could have cleared that out for you so that you didn't have to fly home for 6 days to empty out a storage unit. It just seems very odd.
We don't have friends or family that do that shit for us.
Okay, but
People
why in the
suck.
hell? Okay, so then let's continue. Let's dig a little further into that. Before this trip took place, Joe, Gabby Petito's father, who actually lives in Florida, not in Bay Point or North Point or whatever the fuck point, North Point, Port, not there, but he actually he lived a bit of ways, but not super far away from Gabby. He had moved, I believe, from New York or wherever he was staying at the time. He moved from there to Florida to live closer to Gabby when Gabby moved and left to move to Florida to be with Brian. So Joe did offer to store all their things prior to this trip. He offered them to, keep all their stuff at his place free of charge. He wasn't going to charge them storage or anything like that. So they declined this offer. They declined this offer and opened a storage unit before the trip to store their things. So why would you do that to begin with? Why would you even do that to begin with if only, what was it? June, July, August, 2 months later, 2.5 months later, you decide to go back and empty it? Wouldn't you, if you were going to store your stuff, if you were going to decline on the free offer, pay for a storage unit instead, why wouldn't you plan to already pay for that for the 4 months that you were gone? Wouldn't that already be taken into consideration? Or ultimately, no matter what, why would you have flown out and been gone for 6 fucking days and left Gabby posted up in a hotel, which there are reports that she had checked into and checked out of a hotel during this time in Salt Lake City? So why would you not only pay the hundreds of dollars to fly back to empty out this storage unit that you planned on already having for 4 months, but why would you stay for 6 days? Now, I know that your time there in Florida is free, except for the round trip ticket, but her stay in the hotel is not free. So that's even more money on top of it. So I'm wondering, how much was your fucking storage unit that you had to fly back to close it instead of just taking the money that you spent on all that bullshit? And so anyways, I don't know. It's a lot of stupid shit. It was just really odd. That whole thing was very strange to me. Not real sure why that whole thing happened. My best guess is that, like I said, this was all 5 days after that altercation with the Moab City Police Department. So what I think probably most likely happened is that he went back home. There was a separation here. There was a 5-day separation here, or a 6-day separation here. So 5 days later, he probably flew home. And for 6 days, they were separated. During that 6-day time span, they most likely did close the storage unit. Possibly, perhaps, maybe they were discussing separating. During this time. So he went home and he was like, fuck this, I'm done. And he went home and maybe started closing out that storage unit right then and there and started separating. And then who knows, at some point, that August 19th post on Instagram, I'm not going to dive too much into it because it's also a lot to unpack, but this post came on August 19th during the time of their that separation, that 6-day separation, when Brian had flown back to Florida. And some theories indicate that August 19th post possibly could have perhaps been like a kind of like an apology in some ways, like an indirect apology, and we're not going to totally break it down because it is a lot more to unpack, but it kind of basically is, if you read it, it's worded in a very similar way as if Brian would have worded it based on his posts on Instagram. And not that we think it was Brian making that post, because during August 19th, she was still alive. And we know this for sure based on her last FaceTime with her mother. But the post seems, like I said, very much like something Brian would have posted. It sounds like him. It was written similar to how he would have spoke about certain situations with like humanity and the human race and how we take care of the earth and so on and so forth. So it was very similar to something he would have posted. And some, like I said, do theorize that could be some sort of like a behind the scenes apology, and maybe they were fighting during this time after this August 12th situation. So it caused them to separate, and during that time, the 19th being the 19th, maybe Gabby made that post on Instagram and to try to, grab Brian's attention, like, hey, pay attention to me, look at me, I listen to you, I learn from you, I live my life like you live yours, so on and so forth. Who knows? When in a relationship like this, your mind goes to some really weird places to try to reconcile things. So who really knows? But anywho, we don't know the truth. We're never really going to know the full truth, obviously. So just people make their own assumptions or draw theories. But on the 23rd, Brian does fly back to Salt Lake City. But here's the thing. He's back in Salt Lake City on that day. What day did they say she checked out of the hotel? Because I do not have that noted. I want to say it was like, the 25th? I think it was like the 25th. So at this point, either way, he had already been back in Salt Lake City for like 2 days or something like that before she is noted checking out and seen leaving the hotel by hotel staff. And she's seen leaving the hotel by herself. Brian was never an equation. So it sounds like he could have also already been back in Salt Lake City for a couple of days and they still were separated. Who knows where, and her in this hotel, because it does state that they see her leaving. She is sighted leaving that hotel by herself. But anyways, so moving forward to August 27th, there's the fight at the Mary Piglet restaurant. It was in Wyoming. There was evidently an explosive argument where possibly Brian had gotten into an argument with the staff. I'm not real sure.
Poor service.
Something. Gabby was obviously visibly upset. She was also very apologetic, and it seemed like maybe she was apologetic because of Brian's actions. So it definitely seemed like maybe they were upset with the service or something, not real sure. But they did end up leaving the restaurant abruptly. Gabby was crying. Brian seemed upset, pissed off. He was angry, temperamental towards the restaurant staff, so on and so forth. Sorry, I'm trying to get rid of my notes. Okay, and then we go forward. So when this information, this is really iffy. The dates here are really iffy, but this is one of the last sightings. That one, the Mary Piglets, was the last physical sighting, if I'm not mistaken, of the two alive together. And then when all this very first came out, Nicole had originally stated that the last text, Nicole is Gabby's mom, and she had stated that the last text that she received from Gabby was on August 30th. Now, though, we do know that her phone was turned off, if I'm not mistaken. Her phone was turned off and never turned back on August 27th. So my guess is that the last again, this is iffy. And I'm not sure. There's not a lot of new information out on this case. So I don't know if this has really truly been edited or not. But my more credible sources say that the phone was turned off on August 27th and never turned back on. So if that's the case, then chances are the last communication probably came on that day. Either way, Nicole Schmidt did say that she had gotten a couple of text messages from her daughter that she had received that she was very unsure of, and not even entirely sure that they were that it was her daughter that had sent those text messages. So the first text message that had come through that had seemed odd was, sorry, "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting his voicemails and missed calls." So Gabby does have a grandfather named Stan. And but the odd thing about this text message, and one of the main reasons why Nicole felt that this was probably not her daughter sending this text message, was that she has never ever referred to her grandfather as Stan. Never by his first name. So she did think that was a little odd. We're not real sure why that text message came through or why he would do that. Some people have theorized that maybe he didn't in the moment, once all was said and done, because we're thinking perhaps possibly if she did not in fact send these text messages, that these messages probably came to Nicole after the last sighting at Mary Piglet's, which is on the 27th, which would mean that she went to that. After that, she sent the first text message, which was the "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting his voicemails and missed calls." And this was kind of in hopes to send a message, like sending a message so that they didn't, get questioned. Like this, at this point, we're thinking that a lot of people are thinking that he had already killed her at this point. So he sends out the text message because he's panicking, thinking, I need to cover my tracks, so on and so forth. So he sends a text message, hoping that it's safe. He's not real sure. I don't understand the Stan thing. It doesn't make any sense. It's a really weird text message. It's very weird.
It was code for send the authorities.
That is not what it was. They don't know that for sure. And why we listened to a theory that said it could have been send the authorities now, code for send the authorities now, stand. And the fact that they said help right before the word stand. But for one, that was never a code that her mother and her had ever discussed. And how was her mother supposed to automatically know what that was? And when even the particular source that he's discussing, that he's talking about, even stated they were an officer and they didn't even know that source. They didn't even know that code. So they wouldn't even have picked up on it. So my guess is that's theory, and it's probably not the case. So either way, very strange text message. After this text message took place, if I'm not mistaken, she tries to FaceTime her daughter. And when she FaceTimes her daughter, they don't answer the phone. She doesn't, obviously, there's no answer. And her immediate response after that was, she got a response from her daughter's cell phone that said, "No service in Yosemite," which was odd because the last time she did speak to her daughter, which was August 25th, I did fail to mention that, it's not in my notes, but on August 25th, Nicole and Gabby did FaceTime. This was the last time that she had physically seen or spoke to her daughter, like physically. After that, it was all text message. But when she had last spoke to her daughter, and everybody that her daughter had spoke to, Gabby had mentioned that they were going to Yellowstone. They weren't even heading to Yosemite. So the fact that there was no service in Yosemite, that also really stood out because that wasn't where they were headed. That wasn't even near where they were headed. So it was just out the gate. Those two text messages were both very shocking. And from this point forward, there was zero communication. That was the very last contact that she had with her family. Her family did say that the final message was not normal behavior for Gabby and become more worried about her, according to the police. So sometime either now moving forward, so this was the last communication. A lot of people believe, I think we can just kind of we'll just kind of halt it there. I think that's a good place to kind of stop for today, because then because there's still so fucking much stuff. Oh my God. It's okay, right? We can stop there. We're going to stop there. But yeah, so basically leading all the way up to this, what I think probably happened was, like I said, they got in this argument at the restaurant on the 27th. This is also noted that the day that her phone stopped working, and that there was no more communication at all between her and her family. So my guess is like I said, and like I was mentioning previously, is that they'd gotten into an argument at the restaurant, which obviously escalated. Do I think that this was premeditated murder? No, I do not. Do I think that he had planned it at all in any fashion? No. I think that they probably had a rocky relationship from start to finish. I think that fights would get out of hand and probably escalate rather quickly. I think spending so much time together in close quarters on the road also played a role in this. But I think this particular day, this particular fight escalated. I do know there is a family who, on the 27th, they were driving in the exact same area, the Teton National Park area, where the van was spotted by a family with their GoPros on. They were also another fellow van life couple family, also from Florida even as well. And they had GoPros all around their vehicle, which they happened to not turn off in this situation, at this moment. Normally they wouldn't roll them while they were driving. They wouldn't record all the time while they were driving, but they happened to be recording during this moment when they were driving through this park, and they caught Gabby's van on camera. Now, during this time, based on this timestamp and based on the timestamp with the restaurant, I think they probably went out to eat. They probably got into an argument. The argument started there. They came back to their spot where they were parked, where the family had passed the van on the GoPro. Because when you're watching the GoPro, you can actually see the van door kind of closing in the back. So it would, stupid dog. It would lead you to believe that probably at this point she's probably still alive, considering most people. What the fuck, dog? Seriously? Sorry, my dog. He's a barker. I don't know what he's barking at. But anyways, it would lead you to believe that probably that at this very current moment in time, at that point, that she was probably alive, because most people wouldn't have a van door open with a dead body in the vehicle, where passerbyers could drive by. But on the video, you can see the back van door closing. You see what appears to be flip-flops on the ground. Doesn't look like they were taken off in a struggle. So my guess is at that point in the video, she was probably still alive. This was on the 27th. So based on that whole timestamp, she was alive then. They were probably arguing in the back of that van. Something took place. We do know now at this point that she was, she was murdered by strangulation. And of course, there's no definite anything that it was actually Brian, but I mean, we're all gonna draw our own conclusions here, and our conclusion, what we believe happened, and definitely what I believe happened, was something transpired in the back of that van after that van door closed. They probably got the argument heated and even more escalated, and at that point he strangled her with his bare hands, thus killing her. And it was only what they said, like 50 feet from where his vehicle was parked in that video, where they ended up finding her remains. So chances are it was during that time, after the couple had went through, that he had killed her, and then probably come night he disposed of her body out there. So yeah, we're basically gonna leave it. We're gonna leave it there, and end it there. So we've got the whole road trip covered so far, and we've got leading all the way up until the 27th. There's still a shit ton of stuff to cover, so we're definitely going to do a part 2 next weekend, or next Tuesday. I apologize. The following Tuesday is actually supposed to be a shoot the shit episode, but if we do not get all the way through this by the end of tomorrow's episode, we will extend this into a third part to kind of wrap all of the rest of this up, because moving forward now we're going to discuss all of the incidences that happened after Brian returned back to Florida without Gabby. So at this point now, Gabby becomes a missing person. We haven't found her remains moving forward. We only discuss what had happened because we know how it turns out. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot more that happens in this case, and just the way it is, it's just kind of fucked. So definitely tune in next week to go over what happens next once Brian returns back home to Florida. I hope you enjoyed my husband sitting here looking wonderful, not saying a word. That was fun. And yeah, so I guess we'll just plan on seeing y'all next Tuesday for part 2, provided we can wrap it all up in one more part. And until then, we hope y'all have a great week. Thanks again for being here. Thanks to everyone who shared the podcast, and thanks to everyone who continues to support us. We appreciate y'all. And on that note, we're going to take off, I guess.
Bat?
Yeah. Okay. Deuces.